to me from. You're welcome again to this channel. In this channel we discuss the impact individuals, groups, structures and processes have on the behavior within organizations or within society. As I can see that the behavior within organizations or within society are affected by the individuals in those groups acting separately, or the groups or the individuals acting in groups. It's not an either or. The behavior within the organization will be affected by the individuals as themselves and as the groups they join in the organization or in society. And then it will be affected by the structures in the society. And then the processes in the society, the law, the regulations, the policies and procedures, and the culture in the society. That means the true and tested processes and beliefs that people hold in the society or in that organization. So today, I thought that we should look at the structures. Sometimes people are lucky and they create the structures from scratch, depending on the mission and the vision of the organization or society. But most people join already existing organizations or society, in which case the structures are already in place. And change is hard, and people get comfortable within the structures they find themselves in, which means that the structures in place actually determine what behavior or what can be done within that organization. So it is important for everybody to realize that taking over an organization or a society and keeping the structures that were in place when the society or the organization was created may change the individuals in charge or the individuals and groups in charge, but the structure in place will determine what can and cannot be done. Let's say, for example, the African countries. The way the African countries were created out of the societies that were existing by the time those nation states were created. Those nation states were not created to serve the interest of the inhabitants of those countries. They were created as sources of raw materials and labor. So all the roads, all the railways were built to remove resources from those countries as fast as possible. So the roads were built to the nearest port to get the timber out, to get the minerals out, to get the agricultural products out, the agricultural products that were required in the countries of the countries that control those resources in the African countries. So if you look at the infrastructure in all African countries. The roads are built to ensure that the flow of resources outside are fast to the country that colonized each particular African nation. To the extent that a neighboring country may not have a road joining another neighboring country, but it has a road to the port so that it can be able to, the travel is easier outside, to the outside, than it is in between the countries. So it's been over almost now going to 100 years since African nations got independence. Those structures are still in place, so it's easier to travel to London from Lagos than it is to travel from Lagos to Nairobi or to Johannesburg. That means that the supply chains for the African countries are basically routed through either London or Paris or Lisbon. The communication is also routed that way, to the extent that a phone call from Nairobi has to pass through Lisbon to go to Madagascar. It's very important for everybody to realize that the routing of traffic, whether human traffic or communication traffic or resource traffic, gives a lot of power and removes a lot of power from the African countries. That's why in the African trade, as of this date, November 2020, 2022, I may say, is 19% between the 54 African countries, but the Europeans trade among themselves is 70%. That is not a sustainable situation. But you cannot change it if you don't change the structures that were in place. The roads should run from east to west, connecting African countries, African capitals, or from south to north, connecting African countries, enabling Africans to easily travel in the continent, enabling communication traffic to travel, enabling banking transactions to be cleared instead of going through London or going through Lisbon or going through Paris. There is no way the African countries can be able to grow and control their own destiny if the supply chains are bottlenecked through Europe. Those supply chains served the European colonialists well. When the Africans decided they want independence, we must give them credit. They wanted the political power, but they did not really get into where the power resided. The power did not reside in the visible DCs and visible governors. The power resided in the structural build of society. You have to be able to control how people travel. You have to be able to determine or have a perception in society that allows people to have faith in trading or doing business amongst themselves, amongst Ugandans and Kenyans, Tanzanians and Kenyans, Tanzanians and Ugandans, Tanzanians and South Africans, before the continent can grow. So, the structures that were in place at independence, be they financial, be they telecommunication, be they physical, have to be reoriented. Even the curricula in school has to be reoriented to be inside looking, to be able to solve the challenges that occur internally. If the curriculum trains the young people to look outward, to move out of their countries, we as Africans will continue having a dependency problem. So the impact groups, structures, and processes have on behavior within the African society, particularly the structure. The structures. If we just handle the processes, that means the rules, the regulations, but still the roads and the railways lead to the coast, meaning all resources have to be exported, and then everything has to be imported easily and specifically from specific countries. That dependency is baked in. So it's important that we handle those structures, the physical infrastructure and the financial infrastructure and the telecommunication infrastructure. M-Pesa is a good example. It was created for Kenyans. It wasn't created to serve any other country or entity outside the country. And you can see it was adapted and it's very successful. Equity Bank in Kenya is also a good example. It came into being to serve the Kenyans on the grassroots. And it's been very successful because it's a structure that was created to meet the challenges of the society in Kenya. The banks that were created to serve the expatriate or the colonial class have massively been unable to cope because the competition for equity and those kind of banks has been too much because their customers left, but the equity customers are not going to leave. So that's a good structure that meets the challenges of Kenyans or Africans. So if processes like laws, regulations are put in place to support structures that have been put in place to solve local problems, it will affect the development and the value creation for Africans and for Kenyans in this particular case. So, as you can see, the individuals, the Kenyans, the citizens of these countries are okay. The groups that forming them are fine. But if the structure is such that it's still orientated to serve outside interests, And if it's below the surface and it's not visible, people will trade water. If the best land is structured to grow coffee or tea, while an ordinary Kenyan or African kitchen budget does not include that item, it means that they are using the best part of agricultural land or resources to serve somebody else and hope that that somebody will be able to pay them so they can pay somebody low. When the best way to use resources is to use the resources for yourself and your neighbor, and if you have any excess, sell it to outsiders. That's what the US does, grows wheat, grows soybean, which it uses and sells extra. It's not the reverse. It does not sell, it does not grow soybean for export and then use the extra. No, it grows soybean for use internally, and then if there is an extra, exports it. Grows wheat for use, grows potatoes for use. It makes sure it's self-sufficient, and if it has any extra, it sells outside. So the best resources in the country are used for the country, and then the excess is exported. So you cannot use your best resources to meet the needs of people you don't know whether those are actually their needs. And if they happen to have choices, then you are actually at their mercy. So reorientation of the infrastructure, of the use of resources, and the development of human capital such that the human capital serves the interests of African countries are hard, because it's easier to slide into the role that was created 140 years ago and just continue running it. But if you are running a system or a structure whose mission was to ensure that the best lands are used for the benefit of somebody else, then you haven't done anything. That is where the struggle of Africa is. The struggle of Africa is sliding into a system or a structure that was created to serve the interest of outsiders, and then continuing to run it, hoping to serve the people. It won't happen. We have to ensure that the infrastructure in Africa is oriented towards serving Africans. And in the serving of Africans, if there be any excess, then it exports to people who need it. All export-oriented countries don't succeed. All countries who use their resources to serve themselves and sell excess are successful. So as I said in the beginning, as I do in these discussions, the impact individuals, groups, structures, and processes have on behavior within organizations and society is very important. And we have discussed the impact structures have on African society, African countries. The structures that were put in place during colonial time and have continued to serve the interests of the colonial powers whether they have changed their names or whether they have changed the systems or the organizations that actually extract the tea, the coffee, the gold, the timber, it doesn't matter. Whether the person who is heading the structure is Kenyan or African, doesn't matter. It is the mission that was used to set up the structures. It may look easier to continue running those structures, but it won't serve the interests of Africans. All structures, all infrastructure has to be oriented to ensure it serves and leads into a behavior within society that is beneficial for Africans. Thank you very much for listening to me on this channel. I will request that you like this video, you share it, and you subscribe so that we continue the discussion of the impact groups, individuals, structures, and processes have on behavior within organizations and society. And today we are talking about the impact the structures in African countries have on the society in general. Thank you very much. We'll see you in the next one.